Native azaleas seemed like a really timely topic for this spring, and so I've come out to GroWild today, native plant nursery here just outside of Nashville in Fairview, Tennessee, and I am with Mike Berkeley, who's one of the owners, and we're going to talk just a little bit about this beautiful group of plants. I think Southerners know mostly the evergreen group of azaleas.
That's right.
And those are not native plants to our area.
No, they're not. And of course, in our native, you said evergreen, and of course the native azaleas are not evergreen.
Right.
They're going to be deciduous.
Right.
Many times they're larger, and a lot of them, most of them are very fragrant, which you're not going to find on the evergreen exotic.
They obviously come in a wide variety of colors and forms.
Ironically, one of our most popular native azaleas are the ones that occur outside the state of Tennessee, down in Florida, in the southern part of Georgia and Alabama, and it's called the Florida flame azalea, and this is a great representation of that. This is one of the few flame azaleas that actually has fragrance. And then many of the others, especially the pastels, you've got some hybrids in here. And that's one of the things about the native azaleas that's been really fun, is that they're very promiscuous, and they will cross, and you get these delightful hybrids in many colors, some with fragrance, some not. But when you cross a flame azalea with a white or pink azalea, you get all kinds of colors. So it's like a jar of jelly beans.
Right. And I think that's a case in point would be something like this plant, which is either a color selection of a specific species, or the hybrids also often look like this, where you've got this kind of bicolored form, pink with yellow or whatever. So you get into these really fascinating colors.
Exactly, and this is a new introduction I'm really excited about. This came out of Superior Trees, out of a nursery out of Panhandle, Florida. And this is named Emily. And it is a flammeum. It's actually rhododendron flammeum.
Okay.
And so that makes it a true flame azalea. Now, the true flame azaleas, or what we call the flammeums, are not fragrant. But this has been crossed with some of those that have got the fragrance.
Right.
So, but what the flammeum is known for, compared to a lot of the other native azaleas, is the very large trusses, the balls of blooms.
Right.
But the native azaleas, there's many of them that occur around the Central Basin, up on the higher elevations around the Central Basin, middle Tennessee. So that gives them the heat tolerance. I'll also notice, as far as pH adaptation and then the how much they can handle the drought, beat the evergreen rhododendron all to pieces. So I will take a native azalea, and then also the fragrance. You're not going to get the fragrance off of the evergreen rhododendron.
Out of the rhododendron, sure. So when you're planting, if somebody was to choose to plant azaleas in their garden, what are some of your recommendations for as far as siting them and the soil prep that's needed and that kind of thing?
Well, even though they do like the light, and the more light you give them, the more bloom, the healthier they're going to be, they don't like all the afternoon sun. So what we like to do is say morning to midday sun.
Right.
So an east-facing wall, dapple light like we have here under some of the deciduous trees really work well. As far as the soil, that's going to be the biggest challenge, because typically in Middle Tennessee you've got the clay, high pH soils sitting on top of the limestone. And these like acidity, and then they like sharp drainage. So what we will do is that we will plant them mostly above ground, and if it's sitting on top of a heavier soil and clay. And then we amend the soil about 50-50 with pine bark. This is what we actually grow our native azaleas in, and it's got peanut hulls with pine bark, and very fine. And that's great for a container that you've got above ground as you're growing. But this is what we like to actually plant in. And this is called mini nuggets, and you can see why it's called that, because there's actually pieces of the bark that's got some size. Well, what this does when you put this in with your native soil with some compost, you actually have air pockets in between the coarse texture of these mini nuggets. Once you get them up above ground, which they need to get up out of that
for good drainage.
Good drainage. You got to also watch that evenly moist scenario. And evenly moist doesn't mean wet. They will not tolerate wet feet. But that compost moisture, that I like to call it. It's like if you put your hand in the compost and squeeze it, you can still feel the moisture, but you can't wring out the water out of it. And so that's what we try to. So compost is good. Small percent of compost mixed in with it. But
so when you say plant high, that means leave maybe a third to even half of the root ball.
We have gone completely out of the ground with these and put them in berms.
But you still berm up around them and you completely cover the root ball. So I think that's an important point to make.
That's true.
Because if you leave that root ball exposed, then you're going to wick water out of the ground and the plant will dry out and die pretty quickly.
Right. And it's always a bonus also if the homeowner has the commercial irrigation system because that keeps that evenly moist. And you know, one thing that I've noticed that all rhododendron will not tolerate is that roller coaster ride in moisture and goes from dry to wet to wet to dry. And, to keep that evenly moist, that helps to have a programmed, timed irrigation system. And then keep the pH down, and that's easy to do with, there's so many fertilizers that are acidifiers, and keep that pH down, and which are, of course, in Middle Tennessee, have the higher pH. So, and that's what the pine bark will do, feeding it with a hollytone or ironite. We recommend that to keep that pH down.
A more acidic type fertilizer. What about this bright orange? Is this a flammeum?
This is
also?
A flammeum. This is called a red devil, and what it's known for is it comes out with a bud that is really crimson red, then opens up to that large flower, crimson orange flower. And then we also have on the flammeums, that's one of the ones that I'm actually more excited about because they bloom typically a little later. And that's the other thing about these azaleas is that you can have, according to which species and variety you use, some of these will bloom right on into the summer, into the end of July and 1st of August.
I think that's a good point to make. We've done some shoots over the years down at Callaway Gardens, and they were actually founded around a native azalea, the plum leaf azalea, which down there in central West Georgia flowers in late July and sometimes even into early August.
In the heat of central Georgia. And that's what's really amazing about that plant. And what you'll notice about the plum leaf azalea is that it will flush out all kinds of growth. You won't even see flower buds on it this early in the spring. And then on through the summer it starts getting larger, the buds get larger, and the next thing you know, this bright red flower in July, going into August. And then what they've also done, especially with breeding work in Callaway, is that they've crossed those with some of the fragrant, like the sweet azalea. So you can get these other colors that bloom late with fragrance. So great. Yeah, that's, I think, one of the things about when I design with native azaleas, and there are native azalea collectors out there, just like myself. And when we design with these native azaleas is to spread that color all the way into the end of July, and it's really easy to do when you've got so many different species and varieties.
Well, and we're here in May, and these probably, because of our cold spring, are maybe a little later than they usually would be, but really if you started with pinkster bloom in some of the earliest ones, probably from late March to early April all the way through June and July, you could have azaleas in flower.
Constantly, and in the fragrance.
Well, Mike, I think one important point to make is that these native azaleas can get some size on them. They're not necessarily just your cute little foundation plants. So tell me about this one that's behind us.
Well, this is a Piedmont azalea, and this particular variety is called the Varnado Phlox Pink. Which has, a few weeks ago, actually, it was a vivid pink with fragrance. And the point about them is that they can be small trees. And what's really nice about that is that the bark, and in many cases, you'll see a slight exfoliation to the bark, which is really pretty for winter interest. And because this is a deciduous small tree, large shrub, you get the fall color on it as well.
So, just an important point to make again, a lot of times, and this is not just with azaleas, but with anything that you're adding to your landscape, it's awfully cute in that little 3-gallon pot when it comes home, or a 5-gallon or a 7-gallon, but it does have an ultimate size, and it's important to remember what that ultimate size is and how you use it in the landscape.
That's exactly right. You know, we were pretty much born and raised with the exotic Asian species of azaleas, and we looked at those as the large evergreens, and they stay kind of
compact. You can shear them.
Exactly. And the native azaleas are not like that. You know? And so, especially if you've got a large wall like we have here, you can cover that wall with this azalea.
Well, thanks so much for letting us come out, telling us a little bit about one of our most beautiful native shrubs. We appreciate it and hope we'll see you again soon.
I'm glad you came, Troy.